name is Dennis Sperling. If you've been involved in an accident, call me and I'll fight for you. I'm not an actor or a celebrity spokesperson. I'm a real trial lawyer, and I'll appear before real judges and real juries on behalf of people with serious injuries. So when I say I'll fight for you, I mean it, and I'll back it up. If you've been hurt in an automobile or 18-wheeler accident, contact me toll free at 866-529-2444, and I'll fight for your rights.
This is a good dude, y'all. Coming in story, man, big time lawyer out here in Texas, man. He not tell a story, and y'all need to do the same.
Well, my books, I started writing these books in 2011, and they're called
Yeah, there we go.
Rules to Live By, How to Maintain Peace of Mind and Happiness in a Conflicted World. And you can get them on Amazon, and you can download them directly off Amazon and Kindle. Just look up Dennis Sperling, which is my name, Dennis Sperling, and type in Amazon. They'll come right up. If you want a hard copy, you can email me at sperlingdennis@gmail.com. If you want a copy of the books, and I'm telling you, I give you a lot of different scenarios. There's some child support stuff in here, but it's mostly a lot of different areas which I've had to deal with in my personal life. Those of you guys who have sons who have you just met, or sons who are separated from you, if you one of those young men, and I call myself the lost son, and I actually wrote a lot of music, man. Come to find out, man, I'm related to B.B. King through my grandmother. It was her cousin. That's like my cousin. So
he from Mississippi too.
Yeah. Her name was Elmira King. He was B.B. King. They were cousins, and they all lived out in that area, And so come to find out, man, music is in my blood. So I end up doing 7 albums with Beans and Cornbread. They produced Slim Thug, Paul Wall. Okay. I actually have a track with Paul Wall from back in the day. It's called Grown Man Stuff, but that's not something I want to go into. But bottom line is that creativity allows me to be who I am. But the books, you can find them on Amazon. You can do the Kindle thing. They're very interesting. They're a wonderful read. You can probably read them in 2 or 3 days, but they're great for young men who have grown up, who haven't had their fathers. It basically deals with everything that we as Black American men have had to deal with in the past 40 years.
Man, I was like, man, I was checking you out. I'm like, damn, this man a real deal. So yeah, definitely, man. We all got to reach back. You know what I'm saying? And we right now, like with Kev, we got Donovan, we got all these different brothers put in a network. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's using their talents to help each other get to the next level. Definitely love to bring you into the fold.
Definitely. You guys are amazing. All you guys, I just love to hear my Black brothers speaking their mind. I just want to hear you all say what it is that you want to say and speak on your behalf, because I know you're a little bit younger than I am, man, but hell, since the 1980s, all I've been hearing is Black men get bashed. They ain't this, they ain't that. We've had nobody to speak up on our behalf, so we've been told just to shut up and take it, be the strong, silent type. It's not manly for you to speak up. How dare you argue with these women, blah, 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 even if what they're saying is outright lies and what we know not to be true. Even in our religious, whether it's the church or the Black Muslims or any of these type of folks, it's always seemed like they rather bash the men as opposed to hold the ladies accountable. And that's unfortunate, because you've created this one-sided war, and you have one side that has no accountability for what they've done. And then now what? Look at where we are as a culture.
Shady, Brother DeBell 5000 got a question. Is there any way for family court laws to change if men and real women push to change it? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the fact that you have more women being forced to pay child support and alimony is probably the only thing that's going to make them say we need to change these laws. Because as long as it was one-sided and it was men paying women for the past, I don't know how many years, at least since the 90s.
A lot of years.
Then there was no incentive for women to even want to change anything because that's their fallback plan. I marry a rich guy, have some kids, I divorce them, I'm good. But right. But now that women are being forced to have to ante up, I think there is some incentive for it to change. And here's another thing: a lot of those ladies who have sons who they've seen been manhandled by the child support system, they should become advocates for family law reform. I think one thing we should do is we should begin to do away with child support altogether.
Like they use Black men as a catalyst to get more funding for themselves to go in a different direction. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter as an organization?
I am not happy with Black Lives Matter as an organization. In fact, I'm absolutely disgusted by Black Lives Matter as an organization. These vultures, what they do is whenever a Black man is shot by a white cop or a white race soldier or one of these white suburban commandos, they come in to protest, and they only come in to protest if those Black men's lives fit a certain narrative. So Black Lives Matter is a very disingenuous organization. It talks about marching and protesting, but if we look at who they're marching and protesting for, oftentimes it is, again, Black men who are Pookies and Ray Rays who are shot and killed by a white police officer, a race soldier, or one of these white suburban commandos. They go out here, they kick up a fuss with this protesting, and they really are not anything about Black men or Black men's issues. Because when I look at Black Lives Matter, they don't talk about Black men's issues.
Dramatization.
After a car wreck, you may have to fight with a highly trained insurance company rep whose job is to knock your damaged claim down and out. It's a bad idea to enter the ring alone against a trained boxer, and it could be a bad idea to fight against a big insurance company by yourself. When the bell rings, attorney Dennis Sperling will be there to fight for your rights. If you've been seriously injured in a car wreck, call me, attorney Dennis Sperling, at 866-529-2444. That's 866-529-2444. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you appreciate the format and you appreciate what we're doing here, then make sure you contribute to the Cash App, make sure you contribute to the PayPal, make sure you donate to the Super Chat. It's only you and your contributions that keep this thing going. Thanks.
Attorney, reality show creator, and rapper Dennis Sperling. Also joining us is Sperling's good friends, Vondrick Christmas and Dion Dorsett. Welcome to The Fact Uncensored.
What's up, Isaac?
Now, here's the thing. I've been reading your Facebook posts for years,
Okay.
and this is what you've been espousing. You're saying, I need to leave this country to find a good woman.
Yeah. Okay. See, first of all,
no
I don't really
backtracking
like
now.
the way you
No
just brought us in
backtracking.
here like that, man. We don't need the smoke, man. We don't need that type of smoke. Okay. What happened was I got divorced, and I looked around and I said, you know, I want to change, you know, and I never really traveled. I went to school. These guys went to school with me, and they know all we did was study. And so I got married. That didn't work out. I got divorced, and then I said, well, you know what? Let me get a passport and see what that's like. So I started traveling overseas. I went to the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, all over London, Europe, things that I had never done before, and I liked it, and I liked what I saw, and I enjoyed myself. And when I did decide to date, I got treated like a king, so I go where I'm celebrated. You know, and that's basically it.
You're not celebrated here in the United States like you want to be.
Okay, see, what had happened was I got divorced. You know, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys. My Facebook posts are real, but really they're the feelings that a lot of African American men and men in general feel. They say, look, the juice is not worth the squeeze. I work all my life. I do everything I can to please my wife, and then she divorces me. 70% of marriages are brought to divorce by the women in those relationships. So clearly people aren't happy. Look at the marriage rate. Look at the depression rate that we have. I think people need to get out a little bit more. But more importantly, you know, it's something that I like. These guys, I know that they don't feel the same way I do, because my Facebook page has a diverse group of guys with different ideas. And so this is just what works for me, you know?
And so what works for you guys?
So I would say that
and then it depends on what type of
And
man
is
you are.
anything wrong with that?
Nothing.
Requiring more?
No, it's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just, you know, those expectations seem for some guys maybe a little bit much.
I argue all day, and I don't have time to come home and argue.
And so that's what you get with
what
you perceive to be an American woman.
I think that American women, they have so much pressure on them that it's nearly impossible for them to fulfill those traditional roles that women have fulfilled all the way up until the 50s, when industrialization and it's impossible for them to do that. So the culture and what we have going on here in the United States makes it impossible to have one of those traditional relationships. Whereas in Colombia or the Dominican Republic or Haiti, the women, they still have that culture that says, hey, I'm cooking and cleaning for my man, but hey, there's some responsibilities on the men too, because those women, they still want men that take care of business, that go to work, that pay bills. So you have a role you have to fill, and she has a role she has to fill. So it's not like I'm just going down there sitting up on the sofa and she's making mango every day, feeding me like I'm a king.
you never get flack from, I hate to say it, man, but you're a successful brother.
Yeah.
And I'm a successful man. I don't get flack from my peers. I don't get flack from guys that are up here doing the things we're doing, regardless of where the comma is. You tend to get flack from guys who are not where they want to be.
Right.
And it's like, look, man. And here's one thing that's unique about the Black community. We got the barbershop experience, and that takes anywhere from the homeless dude to the D-boy to the corporate exec. We all go to the same spot. And that's one thing that's unique about us is the socioeconomic groups we mix, and we all look at each other as men. And I'm like, no, there's white men, non-Black men have long been able to do all these things, but when Black men just do what's normal and natural, we're muted. And that's what brothers are finally starting to push back and fight against, because that's crazy to think that you shouldn't have a younger woman, especially if you can pay the cost to be the boss and provide. That's the ideal situation.
It is.
Ideal situation, because she never has to go outside and work and get outside of her femininity.
It seems to me, for those who say this is bad for the Black community, it would seem to me that the perfect pairing is a mature older man with resources who's proven himself, and a younger fertile woman who can come together and reproduce children in a safe family environment. I believe in marriage. I don't like the family laws that are set up but I do believe in marriage. I think men are better in marriage when they have loving women who care for them, who are reciprocate, who are feminine, and who are there to help them be the best men they can be. I believe in marriage. I just don't like the way the system is set up. Now, there are some things you can do to mitigate that: prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements, have an understanding, put some money in trust account, so you can eliminate the financial incentive in getting a divorce. And there you are. Now you got a person in front of you. But
I'm glad that we actually got a high value man. Shout out to Kevin Samuels. I'm not sure if you've been following the high value movement, but you know what I'm saying, you definitely would fit that description. I mean, a lawyer, you know what I'm saying, you went about it the right way. You're married. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't work out, but you got to do what you got to do. Yeah. And what you have to do is co-parent. And we hear the women all the time tell us stories about how I'm such a good, we co-parent good. It's always the women talking about it. You know what I'm saying? But you as a black man, high value black man, it's very important that you get a perspective and give the brothers the right advice as far as co-parenting. And it seems like that's been the bulk of your work, you know what I'm saying? Outside of the law, you know, you've been really pushing for co-parenting and just showing the dynamics of it and how it should work and how it can work in harmony. Because again, you don't have no ill will against your wife. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not saying it on your show.
You know what I'm saying? So you ain't cooking her. So I mean, it seems like everything, you know, you got everything copacetic. So talk to the brothers who may be going through a divorce.
Well,
who may be in a situation where, look, man, I had a kid with this woman and I got all these things going, but I'm trying to make sure I keep harmony for the sake of the kids, because that's who it's about.
Well, let me say this, brother. I got divorced for a reason. Okay. And I, in the wake of that divorce, 5 years thereafter, I got myself what's called a baby mama. I don't know if you've heard of that, but life got real.
I've heard of that. Have we heard of that, church?
Yeah, it got complicated after that happened because the children were born under two separate circumstances. So I can pull from both of these, you know, to kind of explain, you know, what happened. Now, I would suggest that you never get a baby mama if you can avoid one, but it happened to me. But basically I think my point is you can't co-parent with everyone, period. If you weren't married to that woman, if you were married to a woman, hopefully you guys came to an accord at some point and you can use that as a foundation to begin to co-parent and do what's in the best interest of the child. Now, if you had one night where you turned up at the club and you just randomly met some woman and you have nothing in common with her and you don't know much about her and you guys have two different set of principles and understanding about how life should be and how children should raise, it's going to be very difficult for you to co-parent with that person. So
is that the case with the baby mama?
Probably so.
Hi, my name is Dennis Sperling. I'm not a lawyer, but my daddy is. Yeah. If you've been hurt in a car accident, call my daddy. No need to scream and yell like a little kid. Yeah, no, my daddy will fight for your rights. Yeah, fight for your rights. If you've been involved in a car accident, call my daddy, returning Dennis Sperling.
Hello, I'm attorney Dennis Sperling. If you've been injured in a car wreck, call me at 713-229-0770.
Call my daddy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? If you appreciate the format and you appreciate what we're doing here, then make sure you contribute to the Cash App, make sure you contribute to the PayPal, make sure you donate to the Super Chat. It's only you and your contributions that keep this thing going. Thanks.
Understanding about life. I know what it is to be with a woman and how you have to treat a woman and how you have to pick and select a woman. And you do a great job at explaining to these young men what they don't want and what they should be looking after. I didn't have somebody like you when I was a young man. You see, I grew.
Do you believe in marriage, and would you get married again?
I would definitely get married again. It would definitely be a different kind of woman. It would definitely be a woman not from the toxic culture that I was raised in. Okay. And so it's not a race thing, it's a culture thing. Okay. Let me say that again for the people in the back. It's not a race thing, it's a culture thing. I typically have only dated Black women, Black American women. I tried to date the Jamaican lady who ended up being my child's mother, but she was Black American in her culture because she was raised in the United States. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't good women out there, but what I'm saying is you're looking at a toxic culture that does not put the family first. They put the me first. They put the get the bag first. And so it's impossible to have a union with somebody like that. And we got a lot of stuff going on politically. And the question that I presented today for the brothers here is, this is my statement. Just because Trump has been voted out doesn't mean that the show is over. 70 million fervent followers voted for him in 2020, despite knowing all of his shortcomings. Trump is a symptom. He is a reflection of how nearly 1/2 of Americans feel. How does this affect Black men? Let's talk about it. And as the opening statement, it was 2021 and beyond. 70 million Trump voters aren't going anywhere. Look, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that 5 people have been shot and killed in Washington, D.C. As of now, related to the protest outside the Capitol building. One of them is this gentleman, Benjamin Phillips. He basically runs a Trump website, pro-Trump website called Trumparoo, where patriots can mobilize against the corrupt, communist, Marxist, scummy Democrats. Here's another one. We just learned avid Trump supporter Kevin Greeson, who regularly posted online about getting his guns and taking the country back, was one of the 4 people who died in the siege. It was 5 people who died in the siege of the Capitol. Post from Greeson wishing bad things to happen to Nancy Pelosi and identifying with the Proud Boys were found as well. So here's what I'm saying, fellas. You know, these guys, these people are not going anywhere.
And just explain to them generally.
Well, the context of that video was me making a commentary on how people are not really looking objectively at your Donald Trump. And because they're not looking at him objectively, they are approaching him from a position, as I see it, of obsession. Because when I look at the way the Congress has been acting, I look at the way the Senate has been acting, I look at the way people on the street have been acting, and it's like they're not thinking critically or objectively about anything Donald Trump is about. They're coming at it from this position of this extreme emotion, and because they're coming from this extreme emotion, they only think from this perspective of obsessively about Donald Trump. It's all about either you're extremely for Trump or you're extremely against Trump. And these people who are obsessed with Donald Trump, they aren't really thinking about the harm they're doing to the American people.
What's up, everybody? If you appreciate the format and you appreciate what we're doing here, then make sure you contribute to the Cash App, make sure you contribute to the PayPal, make sure you donate to the Super Chat. It's only you and your contributions to keep this thing going. What's up, you guys? This is Dennis Sperling, and I'm back here with a Sunday sermon, and this is a very special one. I want to talk to you guys about the story of Jacob. For those of you guys who don't know Jacob, Jacob was the progenitor of the 12 tribes of Israel. His name was actually changed from Jacob to Israel. Now, some of you are coming in here because I initially planned to talk about a different subject, which I will address next Sunday, and that is the Black church's continued attack on the Black manosphere. Initially, there was an attack made against Minister Japp, who is one of my favorites.
and very outspoken young man from Chicago who leads the church. Shout out to the church. And you know, I found it ironic that you would have a black member of the clergy come out and attack this young man for speaking his mind, when for decades, if not centuries, our lovely ladies have been allowed to say so many horrible things about black men, never to have been reprimanded by the black church. So that is continuing. Those of you guys who may recall, I told you when I first started on this YouTube page that at some point the black church would begin to attack the black manosphere. For me, the reasons are obvious, but I will revisit that conversation next week. I would like to present Mr. Kevin Samuels an opportunity to address the Mr. Creflo Dollar, Pastor Creflo Dollar. I think out of respect for Mr. Samuels, you know, I have a tendency sometimes to jump in when I see injustice being perpetrated against someone who I, you know, find to be a truthful and respectful person, i.e. Mr. Kevin Samuels. And so, but as opposed to jumping the gun, I would like to present Mr. Samuels with the opportunity to speak on his own behalf. That said, out of respect, I've delayed my response to Creflo Dollar until next week. So what we will do is continue this conversation. And for those of you guys who know the story of Jacob, Jacob was a shady, lying, cheating scoundrel. Let me say that again. Jacob of the Bible was a shady, lying, cheating scoundrel, but God chose him anyway. And so this is our Sunday sermon. Now, some of you all may not where is Dennis going with this? And of course, you guys know I am an attorney, but I see these, I see the word of God. I see the Bible as a roadmap. I see it as rules. I see it as the rules to live by. In my books entitled Rules to Live By, I reference the Bible often. And the reason that I reference the Bible is because, in my opinion, the Bible these are the rules. These are the rules of how society should operate. This is the line that between chaos and peace, and, you know, chaos and structure. This is what we have here. Now, if you want to purchase those books, those of you all have purchased the books, you've seen that. But how to maintain peace of mind and happiness in a conflicted world, because when there is no peace, then you have conflict and society crumbles. So this is why, you know, I have these books. If you would like to order a copy of my books, you can get them at Sperling. You can just email me at sperlingdennis@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to email you an autographed copy while they last. But you can also get them online on Amazon. They're available on Kindle. I'd love for you guys to purchase those books. It does me well. It took me approximately 7 years to write the book. So, you know, I put a lot of work into that. But before we get going good, I want to make sure I acknowledge essential entities. Thank you so much. Any of you guys who want to join the channel, it's really easy. Just click on that join button and you'll be able to join. And then if you subscribe to the channel, you'll be able to comment. Only subscribers are allowed to comment. We have 57 people in the chat room. We got 50 likes. So let's get the likes up. Also, let's get the subscriptions up. Another big shout out to Randall, who's with the super sticker. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Randall. I appreciate the contribution. Big shout out to all my guys, all my members, R. Lexus, my Wrench Mob, JJ Diesel, Cowboy Monk, everybody who's in here. I appreciate you guys. So without further ado, let's continue with our lesson of the day. Again, you are free to contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. And we are continuing, whether you believe this or not. You might not see it yet. Some of you all who do know the story of Jacob, you probably understand where this theme is going. Everybody has told black men to sit down, be quiet, don't fight, don't push back. And that's not the story of Jacob. That is not the story of the success. That's not the reason why Jacob had success, in my opinion. I actually want you brothers, and we talked Friday night about African warrior culture and what is the essence of warrior culture is the willingness to fight. And so We'll leave it at that, and we'll revisit. I want you guys to understand fully the story of Jacob first. Now, here's the thing. I don't want you guys to feel, see, a lot of us have been turned off to the Holy Bible. The reason that I bring this here to you right now, and I put it right there for you to look at on your YouTube pages, is because I know many of you black men especially have not gone to the church. You don't trust the preachers. I don't trust the preachers. I think that the black clergy has for the most part really done a disservice to the black community over the past 50 to 100 years. I believe it's become the black church has become as capitalistic as any other corporation in America. And at this point, it's probably best that they go ahead and be taxed, because not only are they political, but they also involve themselves in social issues in the name of God. And they typically attack those who threaten their bottom line not being teaching the masses of people the word of God and helping them find morality and helping them get to heaven, but how much money they can put in their stuff in their coffers, which is unfortunate. So what I do is I present the Bible and the stories in a way in which you can understand them, and hopefully it will inspire you to read the word yourself. Because what we have to understand, especially as black men, Jesus was not Greek, he wasn't English, and he wasn't British. Okay, so and on top of that, the proximity by which and all these people, the area in which these stories happened was at that time populated by what we call Africans, black, broad-nosed, dark Africans. Basically, these are our ancestors. These are our people. 5,000-6,000 years ago, there weren't enough white people in the Middle East for these stories to even be about them. So this is not the white man's Bible. This is our ancestors speaking to us and explaining to us the rules that we need to operate in this life. This is our ancestors talking to us. And there's so much truth in that Bible. If you're able to decipher it and understand what you're reading, it can be meaningful to your life. And I think for many of you brothers, especially of you all who have had a hard time in life, you've fallen short. I think this is very important for you all. And I want you guys to listen carefully to the story of Jacob. This is man development here. This is masculine development. This is what we do on this page. It's all centered around making better black men, making better men. And I think you'll find the story of Jacob interesting. So let's continue. Jacob, Hebrew, is also called Israel. He was a patriarch who was the grandson of Abraham and the son of Isaac and Rebekah, and the traditional ancestors of the people of Israel, the chosen people. The stories about Jacob in the Bible are in Genesis 25 and 19, which is the Old Testament. According to the Old Testament, Jacob, right? And many of you may have actually heard this story already, but we'll read it. According to the Old Testament, Jacob was the younger twin brother of Esau, who was the ancestor of Edom and the Edomites. And the thing you have to understand is they were twin brothers, but phenotypically they look different. In other words, they look different on the outside. Esau was this hairy, reddish looking man, and he was like this big brute looking, like the difference between the Incredible Hulk and David Banner, right? So they were fraternal twins. In other words, they had different genetics. They weren't identical twins. They came out at the same time, but they were fraternal twins. And we've seen that before. You can actually have fraternal twins who are boys and girls, right? So then let's continue here. The two are representatives of two different grades of social order, Jacob being a pastoralist and Esau being a nomadic hunter. During her pregnancy, their mother, Rebekah, was told by God that she would give birth to two twins. Each of them would found a great nation, and Esau, the elder, would serve his younger brother. Now, what you have to understand is that in these times, the elder was the ruler. And some of you come from traditions where the oldest brother, the oldest sister, they get to tell everybody else what to do. The oldest brother gets an opportunity to, he gets the inheritance. Being the oldest brother is a big deal because he gets the inheritance. Because what happens if you begin to, and some of you guys may say, well, that's not fair. If this person has 5 children and the oldest brother gets everything, that's not cool. But see, imagine this. Imagine if you had 5 children and you as the father tried to split all of your assets and proceeds equally between 5 children. So you got 10 goats, each person gets 2 goats. So instead of having a herd of goat, each person gets 2. They eat one, the other one dies. And now what? You partition everything out so no one individual person has anything of any substance. Everybody has like 1 goat. The land is split up. You're always trying to make decisions as to where you can't really do anything with it. It's not, you don't own enough of your inherited land to plant. They want to plant peas. You want to plant corn. So what they do is they give all of their assets to the oldest son, and they expect him to be the patriarch of the family. He's also, in Hebrew times, he would also have been the priest of the family, kind of like the person who interprets the word of God, those sort of things. He's the point man. He's in charge. He's the boss. And so, so when they say the younger son would rule over the elder son, that was almost revolutionary. That went against their culture. So that's why that line is important. It turned out that Jacob, by means of elaborate deception, managed to obtain his older brother's birthright from their father, Jacob, then fled his brother's wrath and went to take refuge with the Aramaean tribe of his ancestors at Haran in Mesopotamia. There's a long story behind that. Basically, what happened was, the first thing Jacob did was this. His brother, one particular day, and this is what you got to understand, their character is different. Joseph is described as a tent dweller. He's basically a mama's boy. He likes staying around the house, with soft robes on and whatnot, and cooking. And he was apparently cooking some lentil soup. It was red. His brother was out hunting, had been out hunting for some time, and he came back to the tent famished. He was starving. And so he said, man, give me some food. I'm dying out here. This is your older brother. Give me some food. I'm dying, right? And so, Jacob said, well, I'll give you some food if you give me your birthright. You my birthright. He said, yeah, whatever. Just give it to me. So imagine that. Your brother is damn near about to die. And in order for him to give you, in order for you to feed him, you require him to give you his birthright. That's shady. That's extremely shady. And here's the crazy thing you got to understand about it. It says a lot about who Esau was, because Esau was willing to sacrifice the future for the present. Now, in the question that and this goes back to the premonition that Rebekah had, the younger will rule the older. Why is it that God chose the younger to be the progenitor of his people, as opposed to the older? Well, look at the character of Esau. Esau was willing to forego the future for the present. In other words, instead of dealing with long suffering, instead of delayed gratification, instead of just dealing with the present, give me a bowl of soup, and I will do what? And I'll forsake my future. How many of you all know somebody who's willing to sell that little $10, $20 dime bag of crack right now and forego the future that they could have as a lawyer, a doctor, a politician, or whatever? How many of you all know that? We know people like that. Do you think that would be a good leader of a nation? That's probably not a characteristic that we would want in our leadership. They're willing to throw it all away for the right now. Let it all for something such as a pittance as a bowl of soup. Think about that. This is the character that we're dealing with. So yeah, Esau was shady. Jacob was shady, right? But Esau was what? Esau clearly didn't have forethought. So just think about that. So we're analyzing this story for what we can get. Leadership qualities. You want somebody who's willing to delay the gratification of right now for the future. That sounds to me like a good leader. Another thing you should understand is the word Jacob actually means supplanter. The story goes as this: Rebekah was having a hard time with the children. The premonition was that there are 2 nations wrestling in your stomach, in your womb. And so what is said is that there's a Hebrew sort of tradition that says that Esau came out first, but Jacob had his heel. He was holding his heel. In other words, so his name actually means supplanter, and it means supplanter by like shady means. But the thing was, there's one story that says that the reason, and as you can imagine, the mother, Rebekah, favored Jacob, the little mama's boy, and the father, Isaac, favored Esau, because Esau would go out and hunt for him and bring food home, and he liked to eat the food that he could, the deer and venison that he caught. So that their parents were playing favorites in that regard. Now, the crazy thing is, at some point, there's a story that says that, and we try to figure out why is it that this mother favored one son over the other. Well, it's said in one of the Hebrew traditions that Jacob, even in the womb, was wrestling with Esau, trying to keep him under control because it was hurting his mother. And so in that regard, we can kind of assume that Rebekah recognized that he meant her well. He was trying to subdue his wild brother. So now on one hand, you got this wild, hairy dude who's willing to forsake the future for the present. And then you got the other brother. Yeah, he's shady, right? But he's also he also was willing to subdue the wild part of his brother. He's willing to keep that wild part under control. You see, think about that. I want you to that chaos. He's willing to keep that chaos under control. Who do you want as a leader? Someone who's willing to forsake the future for the present, throw it all away for a bowl of soup, or someone who's willing to control that chaos that the other side brings? Let's think about that. All right. So let's continue. Now, and here's another thing that happened. So sometime later passed, and Jacob, okay, a father, this is something else you got. The fathers were able to bless their children. And so Isaac, being an old man, now mind you, Esau had already been swindled out of his inheritance, his birthright, right, which was a big deal back then. And so now you have Jacob about to swindle him out of the blessing that his father could give him. So how did the story go? Well, basically, Esau, Isaac, the father, was old, blind, couldn't see. And he told Esau, go on out there and catch me some venison and come on back and cook it. And when you get back, what I'll do is I'll give you your blessing. So Rebekah overheard this conversation, and she told her son Jacob to go on out there and kill me 2 of them baby goats and come on in. I'm gonna hook him up some food. You pretend like you're Esau. And he's like, man, I don't want to do that, Mom. He's gonna know it's me, and I'm not only am I gonna not get blessed, I'm gonna get cursed. He said, don't worry about it. The mother said, don't worry about it. I got you. So he went out, killed the baby goats, came back in, and cooked it up. She cooked up the food. And as she was taking it to Isaac, she told Jacob, put this fur on. It looks like it feels hairy like your brother. And so, he went in the room. I assume he went in there. He presented the food to his father, who was at that time blind. And he was blind and he old, right? And when he spoke, he said, all right, aren't you my son? You're my son, Jacob. He said, no, I am. He said, are you my son, Jacob? He said, no, I'm your son. Basically, he tricked his daddy into thinking that he was Esau. But the dad, here's what you got to understand as a parent. You know your children's voice. I don't care how they try to hide it. You know your children's voice. And then another thing. So, and the reason we know that Isaac was suspicious because he asked Jacob to come upon him. And what did he do? He touched him. He said, yeah, he felt your arm. So he knew something was up then anyway. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is this. But after that, he ate the food, then he blessed Jacob. So he gave Jacob the blessing that he was intending to give to Esau, and basically said, all your brothers shall serve you, blah, 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 and the other. So it was done. Now, at some point, Esau came home and he was enraged by this and said, I'm going to kill him. And so Rebekah then went to her husband, Isaac, and said, look, I think, Esau has married these local women. I don't like them. I want to send him off to our homeland, so he can get one of his good women where we from. You see what I mean? We don't want him marrying these tricks and tramps out here. These women are no good. And so she again provided cover for her son, sent him off to go live with her brother, who would have been Jacob's uncle. Now, here's the thing: that's 2 times that the mama and Jacob have fooled the father. Now, the thing I want you guys to understand is this: I want you to look a little deeper into that. We know our children. I can tell my sons by the way they walk. I can hear their steps. I know one is a little heavier than the other, one is a little lighter. I know their different smells. I know their different hair textures. I know their voices. They can't distinguish my voice. Their voices. I know them. And so I'm hard pressed to believe that Isaac didn't know also that he was blessing Jacob and not Esau. Some of you guys may disagree with me, but it defies common sense to think he didn't. So what does that tell you? Even Isaac knew that Jacob would be a better leader. As shady as he was and what he was doing right now, what he was doing then, they knew he would be a better leader than Esau. And so let's take that into account too. But of course, as I said, Esau was enraged when he came home and found out not only had his birthright been stolen, but his blessing that his daddy was going to give him his book. And this is a big, strong man. So he basically broke down, don't you have a blessing for me, father? And so he said at some point, you know, the manacles that he has over you will be lifted, blah, 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 bottom line. And so a lot of you guys are in here saying the modern day white male. But see, the problem is there were no white people at that time in the Middle East. So I don't know. And there's no indication in the Bible that any of these people were white. White people, if you look at basic genetics, the only white people that popped up, blonde hair, blue-eyed white people, popped up 8,000 years ago. This story is about 4,000 or 5,000 years old. They weren't even in the Middle East at that time. So I don't know, you know, I get it. You have your religions and I understand what you're saying, but the facts don't match what you're saying. There was no white people there. All right, so let's look at this story for what it is and not add facts to it. We can make honest assumptions, but there's no indication as to what color either one of these people were. We know the character of them. One was hairy and red. Matter of fact, after he ate the porridge, to add insult to injury, after he bartered away his inheritance for that lentil soup, the people in the town began to call Esau Red. They just called him Red. Said, "What's up, Red?" You know, so just to tease him, right? So that's crazy, right? But so he was catching it. Now the thing is, as I said, Jacob then fled his brother's wrath and went to take refuge with the Aramaean tribe of the ancestors at Haran in Mesopotamia. Okay, and along his journey, Jacob received a special revelation from God. God promised Jacob lands of numerous offspring and would prove to be the blessing of the entire earth. Jacob named the place where he received his vision Bethel, house of God, arriving at his, okay, so here's something else. Thank you so much, Alexis. I appreciate you, man. Please, you guys, if you appreciate what I'm doing, make sure you contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, the main thing is we're talking about the Holy Scripture. I invite you guys in to come have this conversation. I know folks have strong opinions about these stories, but the bottom line is we have the opportunity to talk about them, you know, and that's what we're doing right now. Now, the thing is, I want you to understand is when he says along the journey, he received a special revelation. What happened was Jacob went to sleep, and he didn't clearly, this was not a very well planned trip because he didn't have any tents. He didn't have anything. Matter of fact, he had to make a pillow out of rocks. And so he put his head on the rocks and went to sleep, and he saw what was called like a vision or a dream or something like that. And what he saw in his dream were angels entering and leaving heaven on what seemed to be something like a ladder, right? And so they always have that story, Jacob's ladder. Any of you guys have ever heard the story of Jacob's ladder? Hit the number 1 button. Let me know you've heard the story of Jacob's ladder. Hit the number 1 button. But what he saw was angels going up to heaven and coming down from heaven, basically on the ladder, basically ascending and descending, being messengers of God, doing the Lord's work. And so he named this place the house of God. All right. He named it, you know, this place, and he actually anointed the rocks when he anointed the rocks with oil, because this was a sacred place at this point. This was the place of God. Now, the question is, what does it mean? What does it mean? What does that mean? This place of God, why did God appear to Jacob at this time? Because see, up until this point, remember, Jacob had been promised, Rebekah had been promised that her son Jacob would be the ruler of the Israelites. But he's still trying to take things in his own hand. He done stole his brother's blessing. And before that, he tricked his brother out of his inheritance. You see what I'm saying? The Lord said, you're going to be fine. You're going to be my chosen. You're going to be the progenitor of my, but he took it in his own hands. In other words, he said, you know what? I'm not going to wait around for God. I'm going to take it in my own hands and do it. Okay. And now he's getting kicked out of his homeland. He's lying, cheating, stealing, and you're a coward, and you're running off, right? Unprepared. You don't have anything. You sleeping on rocks out in the open, and you have. And so the Lord said, look, this is the holy place. You see angels come. I am here. Believe me, right? You don't have to do all that, man. Just be cool. I got you. This is basically like here. And so what did Jacob do? Again, he said, God promised Jacob. I'm telling you again, I told your mama. Now let me tell you, God promised Jacob lands and numerous offspring that would prove to be the blessing of the entire earth. And so Jacob, oh my God, but Rebekah had already told him that. But it's like they didn't believe. They didn't believe with the Lord's power. Some kind of like y'all, you're hard-headed. You don't believe. I get it. But see, this is why this story is important for you. Now let's continue listening. Jacob named the place where he received the vision Bethel, house of God. Now, what happened? Now he arrived at his uncle Laban's house in Haran. This is his hometown, right? This is where his mom and them from, right? Like going back to Mississippi, Louisiana. So you go back to Louisiana and hang out with your country uncle. And apparently Jacob fell in love with his cousin, Rachel, right? His cousin. Now, he's about 80 something at this time. And she's apparently a young woman. He fell in love with her. So he an old man. And he fell in love with this young girl. He worked for, in the Bible, people live to be a long time. Shout out to John Guillory. I want to make sure I acknowledge all you guys. Thank you, R. Alexis. He said, Deacon Dennis, here is my tie for the work you do. Keep doing the great work. Hey, man, you know what? I appreciate it, man. And I hope I'm sparking interest in the word. That's what I hope. The thing I want you to do, fellas, is bring about interest in the word of God. Because when you unlock these stories and you really understand, it really helps your development as a man. See, they would have you believe that everybody in the Bible was holy saints, and they weren't. This was, you see right now, we ain't even got halfway through the story. You see how low down and dirty Jacob was. He's so dirty, he had to change his damn name. You ever met somebody that got to change their damn name? They so goddamn bad when they moved to another town. On one place they called Tyrone. And then when you go to Tyrone Jenkins and when you go to their hometown, they had a whole different name. They went by their middle name. You see what I'm saying? This is how shady Jacob was, right? Just think about that. I want you to put it in perspective. Kind of like when Kobe Bryant changed his number from 24 to 24 to 8 or 8 to 24. He had to change his number. That number was scarred. Jacob was so shady. Matter of fact, his name was basically Shady. A thief. You see what I'm saying? This is how bad he was, right? But anyway, let's continue. So he arrived at his uncle Laban's house. He fell in love with his cousin, and he fell at the girl, and he said, "Look, I want to marry your daughter." And so Laban, because apparently the whole family is slick, right? Isaac is slick. Rebekah, his mama, was slick. Jacob is slick. So you wouldn't expect the uncle not to be slick. So he said, "Look, he worked for the father." He said, if you want to, marry my daughter, you got to work for me for 7 years. You ain't got nothing. So I'm going to let you work for me for 7 years. So, he worked for the man for 7 years for this woman that he loved. He's already an old man. And he did that to obtain Rachel's hand in marriage. But see, here's what happened. But then on the day after the 7th day, he done worked 7 years. He's looking at this fine woman that he's in love with. And my God, I got you. I finally got you. And so what ended up happening was on the marriage date, they sent a woman in the tent, but it was Leah. It wasn't Rachel. It was Rachel's sister. It was his other daughter. And apparently she wasn't that good looking, but she was the older daughter, right? So what happened? Sent them in the room. They apparently consummated the marriage by having sex, because that's how that happened back then. And then the thing was, Rachel was outside the tent, basically speaking to him in the tent. So he's hearing Rachel's voice, but he making love to his sister, to the sister Leah. And so they fooled him. Isn't that karma? I know we don't call it karma in Christianity, but it shows that it went right back around to him. Just like he and his mama got together and fooled their daddy, he now has been fooled by his uncle and Rachel and Leah, all of them in cahoots. So you see how shady these people are, right? But what happened? Really nothing he can do about it. So having sex with this woman meant he unwittingly married Leah. Back in the day, when you knew unto a person, when you knew unto a woman, then that means you had sex with her and y'all were bond. There's nothing else you can do about it. So what happened? Well, Jacob said, well, I still want to marry Rachel. And so Jacob was thus compelled to serve Laban for another 7 years. So now this man is 14 years indebted to his uncle, right? 14 years, man. 14 years. 14 years just to get 2 wives. This is long suffering. Now contrast that with Esau, who was willing to give up his birthright for a bowl of soup, a bowl of a red lentil soup. This is what he did. Now ask yourself, who would make the better leader? The one who's willing to deal with long suffering and sacrificing for what he's won, to establish himself, to have good women from his own tribe, who will be good and help him be the progenitor of a new nation of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, or the one who is marrying these foreign women, right, who ain't no good for him, right, and on top, who won't make good wives, who don't cook clean, and then also is willing to give it all up for a bowl of soup. Who do you think people would want to be the progenitor of their nation? Just ask yourself. So this is the story I want you, because see, remember, Jacob is still shady, no good, low down scoundrel, but he does have these redeeming qualities. Think about that. Okay, and even though Esau is entitled by right to be the leader, look at some of the poor qualities he had. Let's think about that. Now, young elder says Esau was the oldest and the strongest race, had to break the yoke of his brother's neck and was screwed out of his inheritance. Esau's story seems similar to black people, but most of us assume he was white. Well, there just wasn't no white people back then, brother. See, that's the problem. Black and white, there weren't no white people. There wasn't white people 3,000-4,000 years ago when these stories took place. This is a 4,000-year-old story. White folks didn't even know how to read and write. They weren't coming down to the Middle East 4,000, 5,000 years ago. So it's to call it white, that's a modern term that's only been around for 400 or 500 years. We talking about 10 times that time period, 4,000 or 5,000 years. That wasn't even around. So that's just incorrect. It's just simply a story. You can make out of it. To me, it's a story of it's a story of the qualifications necessary for leadership. And it's also the story of those who are willing to contend with God for what they want. Okay, so just let me get to the end of it. But you guys, I want to thank you, young elder. In addition to that, I want to give a big shout out to let me see. I want to give a big shout out to my Cash App guys. I want to acknowledge a Cash App that just came in from D Dre. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Wade Alfred. If you guys want to continue contributing to the Cash App and Super Chat, I appreciate that as I go. I want to kind of keep this story flowing because it's an important story. It's an important story for masculine development. Okay, now. So we back to the situation. So now he's working for his uncle for another 7 years. He's already done 7 years. He got a woman he didn't want. Now he's working for another 7 years for the woman he did want. All right. And what was it? Okay. So because he wanted to marry Rachel. So he stuck to it. Most of us would have gave up after 7 weeks or 7 days. This man worked 7 years for a woman and then turned around, didn't get the woman he wanted, had to work for another 7 years for the woman he wanted. So now you got 2 sisters, because Laban was like, in this culture, we don't let the younger woman, we don't let the younger sister get married without the older sister getting first. That's the culture. The man made him respect his culture, whatever. Yeah, it was tricked, it was shady, but bottom line, it is what it is. And so he had to deal with the circumstances. This is the type of leader that Jacob was. So despite his shadiness, these are the redeeming qualities of this man, which is why he made a better leader. Jacob then served Laban for another 6 years. So after he finally did the 7 years, he got Rachel. And then he did another 6 years, during which he amassed an amount of property. So basically he said, look, I got these 2 wives after year 14. I got these 2 wives, but I'm still broke. And I'll help you, your flocks increase tremendously. So, you know, I want to stay, well, okay, we'll work another 6 years. So he worked another 6 years. And what happened? Even at that 6th year, the uncle was so shady, he still tried to hustle him out of what he was owed. What did he do? He said, well, look, I want you to take all the spotted, I'll just take the spotted calves and what they reproduce. And so what Laban did was told his sons, which would have been Jacob's cousins, and said, go hide all these calves over here. But some kind of way, something happened, and I don't know. Bottom line is he was able to get a certain amount of calves he was promised. And then once he got everything, he and his wife, his 2 wives, and actually at that time it had been 4 women, because it turns out Rachel couldn't have kids, so they thought. And so she allowed her to sleep with her handmaid, allowed him to sleep with her handmaid. They had some sons. And then Leah, in order to compete with Rachel, gave her handmaid, and so he had some sons too with her handmaid. So he basically has 2 wives and 2 concubines, right? And they produced all these children for him, and it presented these, you know, because it's the competition between the women. But either way, Jacob said, look, I don't trust your daddy. We got to get up out of here. And so basically in the middle of the night, they all ran off. And Jacob took the flocks, and he took his wives and his kids and servants and all the wealth he had amassed, and he ran off, right, with the wives and the children, and headed back to Palestine. That's basically what happened. Now, the thing was, Laban gave chase. Once he found out, he caught up with him, but there was a premonition that came to Laban and said, look, don't say anything good, don't say anything bad. So imagine you finally catch up with him. Hey there, Jacob. Yeah, you left, huh? You can't say anything good, can't say anything bad. Yeah, you can't confront him about running off in the middle of the night, because the truth is, Laban was shady, and he probably had no intention of giving the sheep and the goats and all that to Jacob anyway. He probably didn't plan to do it anyway. But, you know, the Lord intervened and said, look, that's my boy. You give him heart, you give him smoke, I'm going to give you smoke. And he's helped you build up all these flocks anyway. So he's hardworking. He worked for 20 years to get all this stuff, and he bounced. He fulfilled his part. And so you don't say anything good, anything bad. So what ended up happening was Laban got in front of him like, yeah, well, what happened? Why, you know, you left, huh? You should have told me. We could have had a party for you here. Why? Before you left, we could have had a party, because you got my children, and these are my children and my daughters and everything. I at least want to kiss my grandchildren and whatnot goodbye. But nothing happened. So Laban ended up going back because he couldn't say anything else. He had done his time. It was over. But either way, so Laban left, and so they proceeded on. Come to find out, and this is the cold part, come to find out, Esau, Jacob sent people ahead to go tell Esau he was on his way, kind of test the water to see what he, because remember, last time he had left 20 years ago, Esau was talking about, I'm going to kill him. And he wanted to see where Esau's mind was at this time. So he sent some people ahead and offered some gifts and stuff like that. Because, you know, Esau wasn't to be played with. You know, he was no joke. He was rough back then, and now he's mad at you. So Jacob sent him gifts and whatnot, and he said, nah, I'm good. I don't want it. And then the messenger came back and said, no, you make him take it. And see, the lesson in that is sometimes people forgive you when they're not ready to forgive you. And so even if there was a little bit of, I don't forgive you, because Esau said, I forgive you, brother. I'm cool. I ain't tripping. But, you know, I have my own things. I got my own money now. I'm straight. He said, nah, you want to make sure that because sometimes people will forgive you when they really haven't. They say, okay, I forgive you, and they're still angry with you. And so in a situation like that, Jacob wanted to assuage or assuage any potential anger that Esau might still have toward him. So his nerves are bad. He thinking he ain't really got he can't go back to Laban's place God told him to head back to Palestine. And so, you know, he was scared out of his life. He was scared. He was scared. So anyway, he got another premonition that night along the journey. And this was the story of how Jacob wrestled with a stranger. Now, at this point, Jacob is alone in the wilderness. He sent his favorite wife one direction, the other sister Leah in another direction. He sent the concubines in another direction with their children. And so he was figuring that because he had learned that Esau was approaching him with 400 men. What does that look like to you? That looks like a war party. That's what it looks like to me. At that time, Jacob had 13 children, 10 of whom became the founders of Israel eventually. But the bottom line is Jacob was now alone and he was afraid. And so what happened? A stranger came upon him and he ended up wrestling with the stranger all night. And so the stranger, I mean, they wrestled all night. And when the stranger realized day was about to break, and the stranger was like, let me go. Let me go, Jacob, you know. And he's like, no, I'm not going to let you know until you bless me. Right. So he was willing to fight for his blessing. It's kind of like the same thing he did, whether it's lying, cheating, stealing to get his blessing from his daddy, or fighting with this man who clearly had done nothing to him to get his blessing. Now, didn't God already tell him that he was going to be blessed at the Jacob ladder situation at that time period 20 years ago? Didn't God already tell his mother he was going to be blessed back 80 years ago when he was still in the womb? But Jacob still hard-headed, still don't believe that he's going to be blessed by the Lord. So he's fighting this man who he comes to learn is God, or a representation of God, or an angel or something like that. He's fighting with this man for a blessing. Say, I won't let you go until you bless me. And so I can imagine, think about how a baby fights with the grown-up, right? You know how you wrestling with a baby and you kind of barely holding the baby down and the baby using all his strength and you just being as careful as you possibly can to not hurt the baby because, you know, it's a baby. It's just a little kid or a baby. So you want to be nice to the baby and whatnot. And so eventually, when it was all said and done, it's daybreak, and the angel or God represented in the form of the man basically slightly touched Jacob on his hip, threw the whole hip out of socket, and said, I'm going to change your name. Your name is now Israel, right? And what does Israel mean? Anybody who knows what Israel means, go ahead and hit. Let me know what Israel means, right? Israel means one who fights with God, one who contends with God. Basically, that's who that is, one who contends with God. But the whole point of him touching him on the hip is just like the same thing you do when you finish wrestling the baby, that baby playing too much. You just said, all right, now get off me. I could have beat you a long time ago, but I wanted you to feel like you were really fighting. It wasn't on me to break you, but I wanted to let you know you had to fight for this since you like to fight. And so he contended with God. And so from that point forward, now you have Jacob, the shady, low-down dude, the supplanter. His name is now one who contends with God. And so he is the progenitor of the men who contend with God, who fight for their blessings. Think about that. Think about that. That's what this story is saying. I think it's very interesting, but, you know, a lot of people don't get that. Now, again, Jacob went on to be the founder of and he ended up going back. He met with his brother Esau, and they end up like they hugged. He embraced his brother, and basically they reconciled. And then Esau said, "Well, yeah, I can follow you back to Palestine." Me and the guys are like, "No, don't do it," because still Jacob is still Israel now. Israel's still a little hesitant to Esau. No, don't do it. I have small children and cattle. If we drive them too hard, they could die. So you and your 400 men, y'all go off about your business, and we'll be all right. Thank you so much. I appreciate the help. No, thank you, brother. But I love you. Enjoy the cows and the sheep and the goats, brother. And so he went off. He went home, and then it went from there. The story of Jacob, and Jacob had 13 children, 10 of whom were founders of tribes of Israel. Leah bore him his only daughter, Daniah, and 6 sons, Reuben, Simon, Levi, who did not found a tribe, but were the ancestors of the Levites. Judah, from whom a tribe of Davidic mind. So, you can read a little bit more about that. He actually had a daughter, too. There was a horrible thing happened to his daughter. She was assaulted by a young man, and brothers took revenge against them. But
You know, this is the story of Jacob, but it's interesting. The story of Jacob's later years more properly belongs to the story of Joseph. Late in his life, a famine. Now, mind you, Joseph was the son of Rebekah. Remember, he liked Rebekah. That was the one that was Rachel. I'm sorry, that was the one he really liked. And late in his life, famine prompted Jacob and his sons to migrate to Egypt, where he was reunited with his son Joseph, who had disappeared some years before. That's because his brothers sold him into slavery. The children of Leah and them other two concubines sold the one Joseph into slavery because, you know, the father showed favoritism to Joseph. Israel showed favoritism to Joseph, and they didn't like it, you know. So it's the same thing his mama was doing, showing him favoritism. They were like, we're not going to let you Esau us like y'all did Uncle Esau, so we're going to get rid of your butt. Israel died in Egypt at the age of 147 and buried in Canaan. The stories of Jacob's birth and his acquisition of his birthright provide a thinly veiled apology for a relation between Edom. That was Esau's name. Edom Red. They end up calling him by a nickname Red, right? And Israel. And this is an interesting story. But what I want you guys to do is, if you want to come talk about this story, I think what we have to understand is this. We can't necessarily, this man, Jacob, who later became Esau, was blessed because he was willing to fight for his blessing. He didn't just wait around for his blessing. See, some of us, especially as black men, we wait around for God to come down and bless us. And what I'm suggesting to you guys is what I always suggest to you guys. Be proactive. I tell you guys one thing all the time. This world belongs to whoever is strong enough to take it and hold on to it, right? And it's crazy how shady Jacob / Israel was, but he still received his blessing. Some of you all know you due for a blessing, but you want to lay around and wait for it. If it's yours, it's yours. Whether you fight for it and you proactive with going out to get your blessing, or whether you sitting around waiting for the Lord to get it, either way, it's going to come to you. But you see what happened. There's nothing wrong with fighting for your blessing. There's nothing wrong with doing what you have. He knew he was the better leader, right? You got one man who spends all day out in the woods, comes back, he's so unprepared, he come back hungry, ready to give it all up for a bowl of soup. Think about that. Think about that. Think about that type of person. Do you want that type of person to be a leader? I don't know. I don't think I want that type of person to be my leader. What about the type of person who, even in the womb, he was causing chaos, and his brother had to hold him and keep him calm, and that's why he was holding on to his heel on the way out? Is that the type of person you want to be the leader of your chosen people? It's something to think about, right? Something to think about. Or you so foolish you are. You should think about that. I want you to think about that. Those of you guys who would like to join in this conversation, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this book, book of Jacob, which is in Genesis 25 through 19, the story of Jacob. I think it's a very interesting story. What else did you learn from this story, Afro Patriarch, that you maybe didn't know based on what we talked about today? Go ahead.
Man, I did not know the story. Well, I didn't know about the story of Jacob. Mm-hmm. The fact that Jacob had to wrestle a supernatural being like an angel for his blessing shows you the power of man, and the fact that in his determination to take what he believes he needs and deserves. Mm-hmm. And that to me is profound, because I've always said since I was a kid, one thing to receive something, but nothing to meet it halfway or to go after it. Go and take it. And that's what Jacob did. And I just find that so profound and empowering.
He didn't write. He took it in his own hand. He didn't wait around. And we have to understand that it was necessary for him to go take it. Like, it's two ways to look at it. It was going to come to him anyway, or had he not done the things he was supposed to do, it wouldn't have come to him. So he had to be shady. He had to trick his brother, who wasn't worthy of the blessing, who wouldn't have been a good leader. He had to trick his brother in cahoots with his mother to get the blessing, to get his brother's birthright and the blessing from his mother, a blessing from his father. He had to basically go out there and trick his uncle
and run off with the property. You see what I'm saying? He had to do all kind of shady stuff. He had to wrestle with God. But see, the thing is about that fight that he had with God, or that representation of God, at any point the angel could have beat him. He said he barely touched him on his hip and he went limp. You said he went limp. He basically broke his hip, threw his hip out of place. And from that point forward, Jacob, who was then renamed Israel, walked funny. He had a bad limp from that fight. So he walked different after that fight. You see what I'm saying? So think about all that he had. He had to contend with God to get his blessing. He had to fight with God. Yeah, this blessing is yours, but I'm gonna make you fight for it. What do you think about that, Afro patriarch? What do you think about? I don't know if you raise dogs, but oftentimes when you make them have to do some work to get it, they gotta run, they gotta jump, they gotta pull a sled just to eat, to get that treat, even though it's theirs to have. Unless they get from point A to point B, they can't have it. What do you think about, what lesson is that teaching you as a man?
For me, it teaches that it doesn't matter the municipalities or great powers that you're dealing with. You still gotta contend with that, and you still gotta be brave enough and want it and bad enough to say, you know what, I might lose this, but I'm still gonna go after.
What
that
about
to me?
Yeah. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
That to me is just like, you know, I don't know why, but it's so empowering to just say, you know what, F this. I don't care who it is. I'm going to get mine.
What about the fact that Jacob was so shady, man?
Yeah, that's
this was God's chosen, and you picked a shady, lying, cheating scoundrel who's willing to trick his own father, on his blind father. I mean, what do you think about that? Like, this is God's choice? You see what I'm saying?
You know, I heard that God there's a duality to God. And I wonder if that duality is why he chose that other side of God, is why he chose Jacob. Because I would say God is not all good.
Can we look at God as good or bad? Can we look at him? This is not one side or the other. This is who it is. Like, this is, like, you know what I'm saying? We as human beings try to separate good from bad. But my question to you is, to the lion, is eating the lamb a good thing or a bad thing? But, you know, it's probably a good thing. But to the lamb, is being eaten by the lion a good thing or a bad thing? It's probably bad. It depends on where you're coming from, who you think is good and bad. Perhaps it was a good thing that Jacob swindled his brother, who was willing to give his sacrifice or give his blessing up for a bowl of soup, or give his inheritance up for a bowl. Do you want that to be your leader?
That's foolish.
No, you don't want that guy to be your leader. This is the nature of Esau. Esau was willing to give up his inheritance for a bowl of soup because he was hungry right now. A bowl of soup, a bowl of red lentil soup, which was pretty common. That's not a good leader. I think, see, a lot of people confuse this, and they put this as a story between who is white and black, but you oversimplify this. If you can't dig deep into this and really get out the fact that this is a question of who's going to be my leader, what leadership qualities require. Sometimes you got to be shady. Sometimes you got to manipulate and get the reins of leadership out of people who aren't fit to be leaders. And then on top of that, it requires long suffering and sacrifice. And you got to overcome your own fears, your own inadequacies, right? Jacob was a little man, you know, a little sneaky, snake-like little dude. And he had to basically deal with this. Imagine David Banner beating up the Hulk. You see what I'm saying? This is what leadership required in order for there to be a leadership. I mean, to fulfill God's prophecy. Think about that, man. Anybody else who wants to join in, man, I know that this conversation has got to be intriguing, because what it's basically telling you is sometimes in being the leader of a community, being God's chosen, it's not necessarily what people would deem all redeeming qualities and characteristics. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do in the name of God. You see what I'm saying? Just think about that. I want you to think about that. And see, the crazy thing is, Afro patriarch, once you give a blessing, back in the day, it ain't no taking it back. See, Isaac couldn't take his blessing back. Once Esau forsake his birthright, he couldn't take it back. You see, this wasn't those type of things. But anyway, what else do you think about this? And anybody else who wants to come in, please come in.
You know, now I'm thinking about it. You have a point, because it said, what was it? It said nature is God. Mm-hmm. So and nature is it can be beneficial and beautiful, and it can be rootless and just pull you down, and only the strong survive. Mm-hmm. Only the strong, and that, to me, I look at Jacob. He was clever. He knew his brother wasn't meant to lead, and that's why he did what he was clever enough to pull his brother out, because he knew that his brother just wasn't good enough.
He was shady, bro. He was shady. Let's not. Jacob was a trickster, and he did it in the name of the Lord. Now, I want to address Dark Power. Dark Power says, I'm not religious. I'm not a religious man, but men can't judge God, and God did not write the Bible. Men wrote the Bible. But the Bible says ye are all gods. And if men wrote the Bible, that means that these men wrote the Bible who in themselves come from the Most High. So technically you're wrong, but technically you're right, but you're not right. And here's another thing I want you to consider. Whether or not God came down with his heaven-like ink pen and wrote the original Bible or not, these laws of the universe, in other words, God's word, still applies. And see, that's what you guys are missing. The Bible works. The rules, the laws of God as written in the Bible help maintain society. They help maintain peace, and as opposed to letting society revolt back to chaos. See, that's what you got to understand, because if there was chaos, we wouldn't be able to exist in this society. That's what you got to understand, Dark Power. So whether you believe in the Most High or not, there is a divine order to the universe, and we who are believers say it starts with the Most High, who created the universe in a certain order, who created, all that we see in a certain order. And in order to maintain that order, you gotta deal with the chaos that comes along. Esau represents chaos. You see, Jacob had to keep that chaos under control. You don't want somebody who's willing to give up the whole kingdom for a bowl of soup. That's what this story is about. And many of you guys who are caught up into your own interpretations of your religions, and I'm not knocking anybody's religion, but your pastors and imams and preachers, they're telling you something that benefits them. I'm asking you to look in it for yourself. See, you don't need a connection with God through a minister. Okay, you can read this holy book for yourself and figure it out. This is about chaos, and it's about order. Who do you want to be your leader? Do you want this man who's willing to do anything to receive his blessing, even if it means contending with God? Or do you want this man who's willing to give up his blessing for something as a simple bowl of red soup? Who do you want? At some point, even Isaac realized that Jacob would be a better leader, and that's why he let him fool him into giving his son the blessing. That's what you have to ask yourself. See, a lot of you all only read this Bible on a superficial level. You don't read it. You just read the words and somebody tells you what you should think, and that's what you think. I'm actually asking you to think. And that's a challenge for many people, because you're still caught up into the religious rhetoric and you're not actually thinking. You're not actually using your experience to actually think. What does this really mean? This is what you have to understand. And I just challenge you, brothers, on that. But if you appreciate what I'm doing here, man, make sure you contribute to the super chat. I've never heard a preacher preach it this way. I ain't never heard of that, because it doesn't benefit to do it this for. This doesn't keep y'all in their congregations. This actually frees you. See, this doesn't keep you. This is a liberation doctrine that we preaching over here. I ain't preaching. This is a you are free, black man, to go get your blessings doctrine. That's what this is right here. This is not a you got to come through me if you want to be free. You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm giving you. I'm basically giving you the freedom that you deserve, that you have earned as black men. I'm not binding it to one race or another. I'm talking about the characteristics of each man. Who do you have? See, some of you all are shady. Some of you all are shady. You have fought for your blessings. You've done all kind of shady stuff. You done robbed people. Let me sit up straight. You done robbed people. You done stole cars. You done cheated on your taxes. You done lied to people. I mean, you got your blessing. And you feel guilty about it. Now, you might be a great person and doing the Lord's work right now, but you still feel guilty about it. When Jacob came down, when Jacob saw that ladder, it realized, you know what, this is in God's hand. He didn't have to keep doing shady stuff. But he still had those qualities. He persevered 17 or 20 years. Then on his way back, he had lost faith. I told you to go back there and see your brother Esau and get this matter over with. You're gonna be good. But what? He was still, I'm gonna wrestle with God. The God that came to visit Jacob might have been to look, man, you cool. Just hey, Jacob jumped him. You see what I'm saying, Jacob? I'm gonna wrestle with you till you give me my blessing. I don't want Esau. You rather fight with God than get stabbed by your brother. That's what you basically saying. You crazy. But that's okay. He was willing to fight with God. This is what I'm saying, man. This is what I'm saying. He was willing to fight with God for his blessings. Some of you have been fighting for God. You know, this is what you do. This is what you guys do. But either way, anybody, I'd love to have somebody come in here and tell me I'm wrong. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. Afro Patriarch, what else would you guys like? What else would you like to say, brother? And anybody else, please contribute to the super chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. The link to the chat room, the link is here in the chat room. Those of you, we have 120 people in the chat room. We have 103 likes. Please get the likes up right now. Hit the like button. Let me know you appreciate what I'm doing. I clicked the like button myself. So all we need is another 27 likes. And look, here's the thing you got to understand. Some of you guys don't understand why you can't comment. You have to subscribe to the channel to comment. It's real simple. All I need you guys to do if you want to subscribe to the channel is just simply click on the Dennis Sperling Unfiltered line right here. Click on that and you subscribe to the channel. If you want to join the channel, which will give you opportunity to see some videos that you haven't seen, which are for members only, you just simply click this join button. Click this join button right here and bam, there you go. You can join Paper Chaser. It's only $4.99 a month. And come on in and you can be part of the family here and get some very good information. The thing is, Afro Patriarch, and thank you again for always joining in. I love having you here. And it's always good to have brothers like yourself who've been here with me almost a year now. What else would you like to, what else have you picked up based on this conversation?
I just, you know, for me, I'm speaking, I pick up the determination of Esau, determination and the cunning, the cunningness of Esau. I said Esau. I mean, Jacob.
And hard-headed too, and hard-headed.
Yeah, and just
all of
stubborn.
these are negative qualities, but isn't that what it takes to be a leader?
Yeah. I mean, every leader, good or bad, had these qualities. Napoleon, Alexander the Great, you know, you name it. Genghis Khan. I mean, they all had a level of believing in a higher power and demanding something from a higher power through what they're doing. And you know, empires rising in China, emperors believe that they had a mandate from God. I mean, it's very common, and it's something that I think is something that I believe is a power within us as men.
Yeah, and you know, I'm gonna continue on with my theme, man. And what I see from my total all reading of the Holy Bible is this world belongs to whoever's strong enough to take it. We all have right to it. That's what you got to understand. We are all children of the Most High. We all have right to this land, to this world. This earth belongs to whoever's strong enough to take it and hold on to it. Don't believe that anybody has any right to over anybody. I hate to say it like that, and that sounds bad, but if you believe in the scriptures, that's what it says, and that's what other people have interpreted as saying. And so many of you all really don't have that interpret. See, everybody thinks Christianity is about turning the other cheek and not fighting back. That's not even what that means. And most people think it means somebody bust me in the side of my jaw, I'm supposed to turn the other cheek. Y'all have a misunderstanding of what that statement even means. And maybe I'll talk about that another day, but it doesn't even mean what you think about it. People are just misinterpreting it, using it as a reason to beat people up. Even this story of Esau and Jacob, really it's the story of Jacob. Esau is just one character, like Isaac and Rebekah and Laban. This is a story of Jacob and one man's development. A lot of people try to break it down to white and black. That's an oversimplification of what you're reading. And there's no indication that this man, 5,000, either one of these men were white or black. We don't know what. First of all, again, white people just showed up on the planet 8,000 years ago. So 3,000 years into their development, they didn't even have a written language. They definitely wasn't traveling to the Middle East. So anybody who tells you that the story of Esau and Jacob, which is around 5,000 years ago, that one of them was white and one of them, they're just lying to you. They had no white people in the Middle East. They wouldn't be able to survive. It's too goddamn hot down there. They'd have died of skin cancer. It wouldn't have worked. That's what you got to understand. And on top of that, you can't have a white baby and a black baby come out the same mama from the same man and wife. Either they black or they, it's not going to happen. Y'all just messing with stuff. People are reading into stuff. Read the story for what it is. We read it, understand what it is. This is a man who was willing to contend with God to do everything he had to do to get his blessings. This is who this man was. He wasn't a sitting around type guy, whether it was shady means, whether it was really literally fighting with God to receive his blessings. That's who Jacob/Israel was. And that's what I ask you guys. The chosen people fought. The chosen people fought for their blessings. They're not waiting around for it. They're doing whatever they could do to receive their blessings, even if it means breaking these cultural norms and whatnot. They fought for their blessings. That's what Israel means. One who's willing to contend with God, one who's willing to wrestle with God, one who's willing to fight with God for his blessing that he's entitled to. You make them fight. What happens when you make a child fight a little bit harder to get that piece of candy? It makes them stronger. What happens when you make somebody fight a little harder to get what they even already entitled to? It makes them stronger. You got to be tested. What are you willing to do God's work for the good of God's word? What are you willing to do? Remember what Abraham was willing to do. I believe it was able to kill his own son in the Bible. These are the extents that people go through to get their blessings. Now, of course, I'm not saying do nothing to no kids at all like that. I'm not saying that. But what I'm trying to tell you guys is this is the length of extent to which people are willing to go to receive their blessings from the Most High. Understand that. That's not me saying that. That's in your book that most of y'all haven't read. Most of y'all haven't looked at different people's interpretation of to try to figure out, well, what do they all commonly believe? This is what I'm trying to explain to you guys. You haven't even read this book, and you basing your understanding of the story of Jacob and Esau and Isaac and Laban and on something somebody else told you without having even looked. There's jewels in there for you to enrich your life with, enrich your understanding of the Most High. You don't need a preacher to read that Bible. You don't need it. Now, I'm more than happy to bring this to you, and I hope you guys contest with me on this. I want you to fight with me and tell me how I'm wrong. And I promise you, I got a response for each and every one of y'all. Same thing with you folks talking about this is a white and black thing. Wasn't no white people 5,000 years ago in the Middle East. They wasn't there. They were still up there contending with that snow in Northern Europe somewhere. There wasn't no blue-eyed, blonde-haired genetics on this planet until 8,000 years ago. How do I know that? Because my studies in environmental molecular toxicology took me to the study of the human genome, and I can tell you, as a matter of fact, Google it. White people didn't pop up to 8,000 years ago, so they damn sure wasn't in the Middle East 5,000 years ago. They were still up running through the forest and living as hunters and gatherers in villages up in Northern Europe. So you telling me that Esau and Jacob is a story of white people, that's just false. It doesn't even make sense. So you got, and on top of that, the environment wouldn't permit a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white man to exist in there, much less a group. And then on top of that, you said one was black and one was white, and they came out the same mama and they got the same daddy. That makes no sense. Cut it out. Stop lying to yourself. Stop believing that rhetoric, that pseudoscience, that rhetoric that people talk, and read the Bible for yourself. That's all I'm asking you to do. Read it for yourself. Stop believing your pastor or imam or whatever interpretation. Read it for yourself. Read it again. Get some other sources. Understand it. Call what you can out of that. And then see how that applies to your life. That's how you should read the Holy Bible. That's how you should read it. You don't need all them other middle people. You don't need middlemen. You don't need all that. You be the man of your house yourself. You are supposed to be the leader of your house. And let me tell you something else. You need to know this word better than other people, because these people that halfway know it, they'll use it against you. They'll tell you this Bible says one thing. Oh, this is what God says. Next thing you know, you around here dressing like you putting feathers on yourself, running around with a duck head on because people told you that's what God said you're supposed to do. They have you doing anything. So you need to learn what this book says yourself. Because as long as it's considered the word of God by the majority of people on this planet, you need to have an understanding of it, and it needs to make sense to you, as opposed to letting people tell you what it says, and then you be misled by these false prophets. All I'm asking you to do is read it for yourself. So when people come at me with, the story of Jacob and Esau, and I read that, I know exactly what it says. What would you like to add to it that I don't know? And, the Jacob's left. No, that's not what that means. This is what this said, and here you go. When he wrestled with, no, that's what this means right here. You see what I'm saying? That's what I want you guys to do, man. Do it for yourself. But either way, if you guys appreciate what I'm doing, if you like this message, the time, clearly I spent a whole lot of time, Afro Patriarch, studying this. You can see that, right? Afro Patriarch, you still there, bro?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
Yeah, clearly you see, I spent a lot of time researching and listening and reading to learn about this so I could present it to you all in a way in which it's easy to understand, and so that is meaningful for you development-wise as men. This is, to me, is a story of leadership. It's a story of ascent to leadership. It's a story of a man who's not willing to wait around, for something to happen. It's a man willing to reach up and take what he knows is his, and that was his blessing. Whether it means he has to, manipulate, be shady, and whatever, it was God's blessing for him, and he wasn't going to wait around for it. He had already waited till he was 80-some years old, and so he wanted what was his, and he was willing to work for it. And even when he was tricked, he didn't give up. He was willing to work for it. I appreciate it. Walking with now. Yeah, even if it meant it was going to permanently maim him, you got to wrestle with God for your blessing that God said was going to be yours anyway. Damn, that's a cold-blooded God. But hey, it's the same thing we do. Sometimes, it's your spot on the team, but you got to fight for it. And I have to respect that. You see what I'm saying? But anyway, God bless you all, man. Shout out to Charles Finney. If you guys appreciate what I'm doing, man, make sure you contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. But in the meantime, Afro Patriarch, thank you for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. I appreciate you guys. Other than that, man, as I always say at this time, man, this is Uncle D, and it's time for me to roll out. So I'm out.